Children's rights and justice organisations are calling to end child imprisonment in England. The review is published 20 years after the death of 14-year-old Adam Rickwood and 15-year-old Gareth Myatt in children's prisons. Now, as it stands, children can go to young offenders institutes from the ages of 15 to 17 for boys, and children as young as 10 can be sent to special secure centres for young people as opposed to prisons. But do you think that we should stop locking up young people in general, Tim?
No. I think, unfortunately, the main purpose of prison, the main thing that prison does is it incarcerates people. Now, the truth in Britain is that the vast majority of crime is committed by a very small proportion of people. And what society reluctantly has to do on some occasions is take those persistent offenders off the streets to protect the public. We have to do an awful lot more to try and rehabilitate people when they're in prison and to deter them. But it's that basic thing of protecting the public from persistent offenders. And the trouble is, it's very sad how we've got into this place, but a lot of persistent offenders are very young now.
But we're talking about a 12-year-old here.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking, a 12-year-old, would it not be better to show the 12-year-old a different way of life, to educate the 12-year-old, to focus on rehabilitation rather than the punishment element? And the incarceration for the public security, I understand, but from a 12-year-old? Of
course it will. I would love it if we could educate this, but we could care for this person, we could put them with a new family, whatever it is. But talk to a police officer, talk to a magistrate, talk to certain, representatives of the community. There are certain young people in a community who plague their neighbours, plague shopkeepers, plague people all of the time. And the police take them in, they're given special social service care, but then they feel that they are beyond almost being dealt with. And we have this county lines drugs delivery system whereby drugs are sent around the country. Criminal gangs are particularly using young people because they think they can't be put in prison, that society won't jail. So actually young people are being used by these criminal gangs because they think society won't treat them as them frontally they should be treated. I suppose there will be sympathy for young people that are being used as drug mules, for sure. But when we look at 12-year-olds, I mean, I said, do we need to imprison a 12-year-old to keep the society safe? But actually, 12-year-olds kill, Ava. And when you've got a 12-year-old that has committed something as hideous as murder, which thankfully is fairly rare, maybe Tim's got a point. Actually, for the safety of society, they do need to be locked up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then you look in the, in the cases of, the James Bulger and, murderers like those children, they were tried as adults, and it was it was a completely different way through the judiciary system. But look, I don't want to approach this and sound sort of pink and fluffy. I think that's which I often do. But I think that we need to have some sort of facility that is different to a prison. So if you are a young person and you are a terror to your community and you are, you're a terribly behaved young person and you might be causing a lot of harm in your local community, I don't think that necessarily a prison is the right place for you to go, but I do think that we should have some sort of young rehabilitation facility. In the cases of, children who've got extreme mental health issues, they might have been through the care system or they might be dealing with extreme abandonment. I don't think that locking them inside a youth offenders unit is the best place for them to go. And, even from a taxpayer perspective, even from a society perspective, no, they are extremely expensive. But those young children will be released eventually, maybe after 2-3 years. They'll be in a worse place than when they first went into that youth prison. So would it not be better to try and rehabilitate them?
Well, let's talk about young offenders that are not on the murderous scale, that are just causing a nuisance to the general public around them. When they are put into these institutions, there's statistics that say they don't get even half of the education that they are expected to get, or that the government would like them to get. Surely, before we start locking up children, we have to make sure we get that in place first, because that's fundamental. The minute you're going to let somebody out into the community with no education, no prospect of a job, what are they going to do?
Well, this might be seem hard line, but I would say no to that, actually. I think it's that incarceration point I mentioned earlier.
You just want them looking at a wall?
Well, no, I don't. I would say to you, absolutely, we need to try and rehabilitate them. Absolutely, they need to get extra education. But the first thing is we have to take them off the streets if they're persistent offenders. Because I'm afraid if you're an old person whose retirement is being ruined by a kid constantly throwing stones at your window, you're terrorised constantly by these kids. If you're a local shopkeeper with your shop constantly, and worse, that kid, if they've had several chances, the first duty, I'm afraid, of society is to incarcerate them and protect everyone else. Of course, ideally, and we should definitely, insist on it if we possibly can, they should be rehabilitated and cared for. But the first duty, really, of a society is to protect the public.
OK.
And I would incarcerate those kids.
That's the argument you would use for excluding children from schools, right? You'd say it's not fair on the other pupils who are in the class who are being distracted by this unruly child. But then that unruly child loses all of its life prospects. We've seen that children who are taken out of the classroom do tend to commit crime at a much higher rate than their peers. And so perhaps it is time to spend.
I think teachers, it was interesting you said time to spend. I think teachers would say they need more money in order to provide the care needed for those.
Everyone always needs more money.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful idea, is the nation of the second chance. And I really believe in it. Everyone deserves a second chance if they've gone wrong. But first priority is always public safety. OK. Jennifer from Glasgow, you're up first on this. Do you think we need to stop locking up children? We're talking about under-18s here.
No, I think that it should keep going. Simply because if they're not disciplined for their crime at that young age, then it could therefore carry on into their later life. So they wouldn't have learned a lesson from something that they've done wrong. And they could therefore then carry on. But
Jennifer, our reoffending rates in this country are really incredibly high compared to some European countries. And so that would say that prisons actually don't work. And what you're doing there is you're sending a child that has the propensity for criminal activity, clearly, because they're there, or has the background to get more involved in crime, into a situation where they're hanging around with children of the same mentality. And it might just be a school for criminals.
Well, with all due respect, the justice system just doesn't work. It doesn't work regardless anyway.
What would make it better, Jennifer? What would make it work?
Well, just keep... If somebody's going to do something wrong, they should therefore be punished for that.
Do you not think there's any space for any kind of rehabilitation then, particularly for the under-18s?
I would love to see rehabilitation, but you don't get that. You don't get that in prison. Not really. Not really. That's through experience, not from my own, but just people connected. So I'm like, why stop? I don't know, if a 16-year-old person or a 15-year-old person goes out and commits a crime and doesn't get punished for it, then it just gives them, I don't know if these are the right words, but a licence to keep going.
Yeah.
You think it would just encourage young people to commit more crime? Jennifer, thank you very much for your call. Paula from Oxfordshire, what's your view when it comes to locking up younger people?
I tend to agree with your female guest, and I don't think she is being pink and fluffy.
I didn't agree with that sort of description of how she sounds normally. I don't think you do normally.
I thought she was a bit pink and fluffy.
Fine. Paula, what's your thoughts then? Are they pink and fluffy?
I can see both of your guests' point of view, but I think the problem with locking children up is demonising them, and you only have to look at Feltham and what went on there with, young children being demonised and coming out worse or committing suicide and self-harming. Obviously, they do need to be in secure units because they're not safe to be with the public, but often they've come from disadvantaged background and they've had no guidance from their parents and, they feel bitter towards society. But I think they need guidance and support and need to be shown the right way. And I just don't, and obviously not to be let out again until we know for sure that they are safe. But I do believe a lot of this starts with the parents, because that's where you learn. You do. You learn from your parents, their views and how they behave. So, I don't think they should be put in prison. But
I think, Paul, a lot of people will agree with you on the parents' comment. I'm just conscious that there will be parents out there that are trying really hard and working and trying to provide a wonderful life, and their child still, for whatever reason, went off the rails, maybe mental health or something else. So I'm just conscious that we're not demonising all parents whose children are in prison. But I completely take your point. You wanted to come in there, Tim?
I'd say the first thing we can do for these kids, I work for this think tank called the Centre for Social Justice, and we give regular awards to groups that work in prisons. And it's basically providing literacy is one of the big things that you can change. So many of these kids just cannot read. They feel completely unable to participate in society because of that. And so, you can't be too ambitious when you have these kids in prison or even adults in prison. But literacy, if you can really change that, and there's a lot of successful models, that really does mean that people think, OK, well, I've got this now, what can I do next? Because you can't turn someone from a persistent offender to the model citizen in prison, but you can give them the hope that they can move forward, and it gives them the confidence then after prison to take further steps. Because once you've got that literacy, you can start to access other things.
And I think also there's a very large percentage of the prison population that are dyslexic. And have issues with that anyway, and that maybe had spiralled into the lifestyle that they ended up having. But it's an interesting point. And actually, whether their sentence should be determined on getting up to a certain level, when their children's getting up to a certain level in literacy and in maths and in education before they're allowed to go back into mainstream. I don't know. Paula, thank you very much for your call. Stuart from Glasgow. What's the calls from Glasgow on this one? What's your view on this?
I've been in and out all my life, Stormy, since I was 16-year-old, right?
Okay.
And I was never educated in prison. Even offered education, you were just locked behind a piece of wood, and that's your day, okay? I've been in Berlin, I've been in Pullman, I've been in fucking, sorry for swearing, I've been in Gleneagles, up there. I've been in all the prisons in Scotland, Peterhead and everything.
So, Stuart,
it doesn't help. It doesn't. You shouldn't be demonising young people. See, if you just show them the error of their ways and maybe point out some of the relevant facts that are right round about them, then say, you can't do that to other people because other people are doing their stuff. Just, everybody should be able to go about their day without being threatened in any way. I do fully believe it. Being in prison, I have done things that I shouldn't have done, right? But I understand now as I got older, but I had to educate myself.
Yes, you weren't educated. So you actually agree with Tim then that even if you were just taught literacy, you were taught just the basics, that would have really helped?
No.
No?
I was a old boy, about 13, so I could add and I could also write in cursive.
So you
that was good enough for me. I left school and I went out into the world to become a man, and everything just went wrong. And I get put in prison for one time. I had a motorcycle, 125cc, fully tax insured and MOT, and my licence was revoked by one day, and I'll get 3 months.
Oh, Stuart.
Seems very harsh.
That does seem harsh. It makes me think that there's more to that, Stuart. But I trust your. What you're saying. Stuart, thank you very much for your call, and I'm really sorry that it started off for you in that way, and I really hope that you've turned things around now and you're living a great life. Thank you very much for your call.